Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts, and today we're going to spend a little bit of creative time together creating a little mug rug panel, little mug rug project, and we're going to be printing this on fabric. So I've been doing some experimenting with my new color laser printer, and I thought I'd bring you through the whole process, from the fabrics to how to stabilize the fabrics, how to set up your PDF, the print options, putting it through the printer, heat setting it. We're going to do this project 6 different ways and take a look at all of the projects once they come out of the wash. We're going to start from the very beginning. So if you would love to make this project, there is a free PDF in the description box below. It brings you over to my Dropbox. You download it and you're ready to play along with me and do your own experimenting. Now, certainly I think that any printer can print on fabric. All of the inks are different. The toners are different. You're going to have to do some experimenting of your own. I don't think that there's one rule book that we all can follow. I wish it were that easy. But I think if you have something like this that you can play around with and you try some of the things that we're going to cover today, it might get you headed in the right direction to finding a process that works for you and your printer and your inks, whether it be a laser printer or a color printer. So we're going to start with the types of fabrics that I like to use while printing on fabric. You can do this with photos. You can do this with text. You can do this with graphics and make your own fabrics. Imagine the possibilities. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring you over to my work table, and we're going to start by looking at some fabric. So the first thing that we're going to do today is talk about the different types of fabric that you can print on. So I'm just going to share some of the fabrics that I've used to print on that I've been really happy with the results. Okay, I don't have specific brand names because usually these muslins and cotton fabrics that are like solid colors, I can't usually find a brand name in the salvage area. Plus, these are all scraps, and so I've used them, and if they had anything printed on the salvage, that is gone now. So what I would do, you'll see I have, this is just a bright white 100% cotton muslin. When you go to Joann's, there's all different ones that you can choose from. They have some really cheap ones that start like at $3.99, $4.99 a yard. They have some really expensive ones that are like $12.99, $14.99 and up. And then there's all the ones in the middle. So this is one that's in the middle range of the cotton muslins that you can find at Joann's. This fabric here is the white Kona fabric that you can find at Joann's. I remember that because I bought that specific for a project. I've printed on that, and that turns out pretty well. One thing you'll notice is the thread count, and you might not be able to see that. On the Kona, you can definitely see the thread count, and so each one of the fabrics, the print result is a little bit different from fabric to fabric. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The smoother the fabric, the better and more clear your print is going to be. So I've used this Kona. I've used this is a muslin that's called tea stained at Joann's. So this is for like a really vintage look. That is really pretty. And then these are 2 other different muslins that I've gotten. This here's the one that we're going to use. It's just a bright white, and the thread count is pretty high. It's got a very smooth feeling to it. So what I've done, this is not washed, pre-washed. I took some of this and I threw it through the wash because I was doing some testing this week. You might have caught that video. And I found out that the prints for my printer and my inks hold in the fabric much better if I pre-wash my fabric first versus using just right off the bolt. So I've pre-washed it, I've pressed it the best that I could get all those wrinkles out, and we're ready to get started. After you have pre-washed your fabric, it's all dry and pressed, you're ready to go. we're ready to make our fabric sheets that go through our printer. So there's a couple different ways that you could do that. You really need to stabilize that fabric so that the printer feeds it through without getting all jammed up and causing issues with your printer. So I've done a video before about printing on fabric using freezer paper. I'm going to put a link in the description box below. Because this has a plasticky coating, you could press this to your fabric and then cut your sheets using freezer paper. So if you haven't seen that video, go give that a watch. You might want to use the freezer paper because more than likely you might already have some of this around your house. That's a great way to create your own fabric sheets. However, here lately, I've been doing something that's a little bit faster and I'm getting really great results with it. Okay, so I'm using a laser printer and so this makes a difference, but I went on to Amazon and I was looking for full page labels that I could use with my laser printer. So this pack came as 100. There's 100 full page labels in here, and this is for inkjet and laser printers. So this is safe to put through a laser printer. So I got this and I've been experimenting and it's so much quicker and I'm getting really great results. Before I ordered this though, let me show you what I was using to start with. So I bought these at Walmart when I bought my printer. And so these are for laser printers and they're the half sheets. So I would take off 2 labels and put it onto my fabric and then cut my sheets out. So I was testing out this theory and this fed the fabric through my printer really well, but it left a really sticky residue onto my fabric. And this was kind of pricey. You only got, let's see, 20 labels. There were 10 sheets. So, you know, it goes through your printer 10 times. And I really found that I could not reuse these because I ripped them, peeling them off the back of the fabric. And then my fabric was sticky and I couldn't get that stickiness off. So I went on to Amazon and I bought these sheets and it does not leave a sticky residue. And so I'm really happy. I have 100 of them. And actually, it was about the same cost as 10 sheets of the Avery from Walmart. I'll put a link to that. You can go and read the description about these sheets. Again, you can use them for both types of printers. So it's a full sheet too. So you don't have to try and line everything up. You just put the sheet down. So I have 6 sheets here. I'm going to do 6 experiments with you and I'll walk you through how I put the sheet onto the fabric. My fabric is nice and dry. I've done my best to try to get all the wrinkles out, but you'll still see it's a little wrinkly, but that's okay. I'm going to take my sheet. Let's figure out a way to keep this from scooting all around. There. Just going to take the adhesive label sheet right off of the backing paper. And I'm putting it onto the wrong side of the fabric. We're actually going to print on the other side. And I just do it so that I get the most use out of my fabric. Once it's on your fabric, you're just going to smooth it out, just like this. I'm going to go ahead and just separate this from the bigger sheet, and I'll show you how I trim up the fabric for this one, and then I'll do the other 5 off camera. We'll get that out of the way. So here is the label side. We'll turn it over. Here's the fabric side. I go ahead and just do a finger press, and that adhesive actually acts like an iron, pressing out all of your wrinkles, which I think is fantastic. So there we go. Now I can go ahead and trim this up, and you're going to want to trim it to 8.5 by 11. Grabbing my ruler. I like to use a square ruler for this. I'm going to trim up this side first. Now you just line up your paper, which you can see through a clear ruler, and make sure everything is nice and straight. Which is a little hard to do from this angle. Let's go with that. Oh yeah, we did pretty good. Now we can rotate that. It's a little bit off on that side. I'll have to trim that up just a tiny bit. Let's see. Actually, these labels are 8 1/4. I think that's right though. Whoops. Focus, Lisa, focus. Here we go. Yeah, they're 8 1/4 by 11. So when you put this into your printing tray, you'll want to adjust the little movable parts in your printing tray that snugs up to your fabric sheet. So there we go. There's our fabric sheet. It is ready to go into our printer. So let me bring you over and show you on the computer how I open up the PDF. Whatever type of file you're using, go ahead and open that up, and I'll show you the settings that I like to use when printing on fabric. Alrighty, we are going to come over to my computer. I'm going to show you. You're going to want to find where you have saved the PDF. So wherever that is on your computer, you're going to go ahead and open up your PDF. Let's see, I saved mine to my desktop in a file called Printed Mugrug. So we're going to open up that file, and here is the PDF. Just going to double click that, and it's going to open my Adobe Acrobat Reader DC. Now this is a free PDF reader. You can find it by Googling Adobe Acrobat Reader DC. And if you don't have this, you can freely download the software that opens up your PDF. Let me see. I'm going to back you up. There we go. I wanted you to be able to see the top of the screen. So I have my PDF here, and it just opened up. And let's see. We're going to go ahead and print this PDF. So I click File, go down to Print, and a new box opens up. Mine is going to take just a second. For some reason, my computer is running on the slow side. I think I need to do some cleaning out of files and stuff that I don't use. Maybe empty my recycling bin. I'm not sure. Okay, there we go. There's the new window. And okay, so the first thing I want you to notice is this box. This is how it's going to print. And when I created this file, I saved it as a landscape. So right down here in orientation, you're going to change it from portrait to landscape. It changes the dimensions of what we are printing just a little bit. So that's the original design right there in the landscape mode. Now before we send this to the printer, let's go ahead and change a couple of settings that I get better results with when I print on fabric. The first thing I'm going to do, because I have a couple of printers hooked up, is I'm going to go through the printer box and select the printer that I am using, just like that. So my printer is selected, and next let's go to Properties. That's going to open up a new box, and the first thing I'm going to do is to go over to Paper. I'm going to come down to Paper Options, and under Type, I'm going to change this from unspecified to heavy 90 through 120G. I seem to get the best print results using that setting. So we have that selected, and next we're going to go to Graphics. Right now it's set on standard, and that's just the default setting. I'm going to change that to photo, and it seems to distribute a much better print when I do that. So I have heavy paper type and photo document type. I'm going to press OK, and at this point we are ready to send this over to the printer. So you would just hit print. Make sure that you have your fabric loaded in your printer before you do this. So here we are with the printer. I have my fabric sheet that we created together. This is the label side and this is the fabric side. Now I do think that all printers are different. You need to figure out which side your printer prints on and make sure that your fabric is being printed on and not your paper. So I know that in my tray, if I put the fabric side up, that it prints on the fabric. You might have to figure out which side to put up first. So I'm going to just put that right into the tray, and there's no paper in here. It's completely empty, and this is the only thing I have in my print tray. Again, you might have to adjust so that everything is nice and snug in there. And load your print tray. Warm up, printer. All right, there we go. Now let me go hit print, and we'll watch as it prints through. Okay, there's my paper down in the tray, and when it comes out, it's going to slide right onto this little tray here. Ta-da! Now I like to be really careful when I pick it up because some of the toners might not be dry yet. If you're using an inkjet, your inks might not be dry yet. So I like to be careful when I pick it up. But there's our print, and you can see that the fabric fed through the printer really well with the label sheet. I have one little tiny string down there that got loose. So now I'm just going to let this sit and dry. And if you're not in a hurry, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to let this dry overnight. If you're like me, you wait about an hour and then you finish your project. So it's totally up to you. You might have to wait. You might be able to just cut this apart and start using it right away. Before we move the label backing off the back side of our fabric, you want to make sure that your toner or your ink is really, really dry. So this is going to determine how long you have to wait before you peel off your sticker label. This one is a newer print, and you can see I can smudge those inks a little bit, or actually that toner a little bit. And this one's been sitting longer, and when I rub it, nothing is smudged. So you want to make sure that you are at this stage before removing the label off the back. Now, because I am really impatient, sometimes what I like to do is before removing my label off the back or my freezer paper, I like to just go ahead and hit this with the iron and make sure that these inks or toners, whatever you're using, is nice and dry before we start messing with this fabric. So you'll set your iron to whatever setting for the fabric that you have printed on. I'm using cotton. So I have my iron set on the highest cotton setting, and there's no steam, it's just heat. And we're just going to make sure that these toners are nice and dry. And just like that, we're ready to remove the label off the back. Now you can see I have absolutely no smudging. It is nice and dry. Now, when removing the paper or the label off the back, I did find that the label comes off a lot easier if your fabric is not pre-washed. So if you're doing projects that are not going to ever go through the washer or the dryer, then printing on unwashed or unpre-washed fabric, the removal of your label is going to be a lot easier. I found that once I pre-washed my fabric, the label was a little bit more tricky to get off. However, if you have patience, you can do this. Let me grab a stick pin. I have just a little straight pin, and I'm going to score this right on the back and then start removing the label. Now keep in mind, this part of the process is tedious. And when I did this on unwashed fabric, the whole label came off in one sheet. And I was like, yay, this is so easy. And then I figured out that my toner's washed out of my fabric. And so I pre-washed my fabric. And now this part of the process is a little bit more time consuming. However, this fabric is not sticky at all. There's no sticky residue. And it might be that if you heat this up with your iron, maybe on a lower setting, that it peels off easier. But there we go. I'm going to finish pulling off this label. And then we're going to just make this little project together. Actually, I have a few more things I want to show you first. Because we're going to go through actually heat setting our image. I think that will be helpful. I think even some of the store-bought fabric sheets that you can run through your printer, some of those are difficult to get the paper off the back too. But so like that, we've removed the sticky label off the back. So there's the back, not sticky. And here's the front. Nothing is smudged or distorted. And we're ready to go through. I'm going to show you. Let's see, we're going to do 6 projects together. So I'm going to heat set this image a couple of different ways with an iron and with a Cricut heat press. And we're going to do retain on a couple of these images, and a couple of them were not. So I'm just going to bring you along through the 6 different processes so you can see the results of our finished projects, okay? We are going to start by taking a fabric marker, and I'm going to label each one of our projects so we know the exact process that we're doing to each one of them. So this one I'm using my iron on a high cotton setting with no steam, and I'm going to heat set that image for about 35 to 40 seconds and make sure I get the whole graphic covered. I do hit it from behind for just a second as well. The second one we're going to do with the iron as well, and this one we will treat with retain when we're finished. This one we're using the iron, and we are not going to wash this one so that we have a comparison. For this print we're going to use the Cricut at 305 for 10 seconds, and we are not going to treat with retain. And in this print, we are going to do the same settings, 305 for 10 seconds, and we will treat this one when we're done with retain. This one we're going to bump up the temperature to 340 for 40 seconds, and we will treat this fabric with Retain once we're done. Now we're going to go ahead and move downstairs into the kitchen. I have my tea kettle on with some water. I have a Pyrex glass dish here, and we have our Retain. I'm going to put a link to Retain down in the description box. I'm just going to use one little capful and put that into the Pyrex dish. And then I'm going to take my tea kettle. The water is very, very hot, but it's right before boiling. And I'm going to put enough water to make it about an inch deep. That's good right about there. And now I'm going to give that a swirl, mix up the Retain into the water. And I'm going to start adding my fabric. Just going to make sure that it's really good and soaked all the way through, because I am adding all 3 of my prints into this Pyrex dish. Now the directions on the Retain that I'm using say a water temperature of 140, and you're going to set the timer for 20 minutes. So I'm just going to add all 3 of my fabrics, set the timer, and then we're going to come back after 20 minutes. I'm pretty sure that the instructions say to keep stirring this around. I'm just making sure everything is soaked really well. Then I'm going to set the timer, and I'm going to go do something else. Now that the timer has gone off, we're ready to just remove our fabrics. I'm going to place them onto a dry towel, just like you see me doing right here. Just kind of dripping off the extra stuff back into the pan. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll this towel up so that I can get all of my prints onto this one towel. We'll take out this last one. I'm going to roll up this towel, which is going to catch a lot of the excess water. And then I'm going back upstairs into my studio, and we're going to dry this fabric with an iron. Coming upstairs, we're going to take out the first one. I'm going to show you how fast you can dry your fabric with a good hot iron. I have my iron set at the highest cotton setting, no steam. Just going to go over this print. I guess I spent maybe 40 seconds pressing this all together. And once I was done, it was nice and dry, and I was ready to move on with our project. Now that the prints with the Retain are nice and dry, I went through each one of them, trimmed to about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, cut some batting that's a little bit bigger and a backing that's a little bit bigger. I transferred our information for each one of the different methods that we've done onto the back so we can keep track of which is which. And now I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine and do some quilting. I'm just going to bring you along as I quilt this first one. And you can see I have my free motion foot on, and I'll just do some free motion quilting on this first little mug rug. You could certainly do straight line stitching. You could pretend that this is patchwork and do a stitch in the ditch look with your quilting. Just thought it would be fun to share this part of the process with you. You could get really creative with whatever type of quilting that you'd like to do. Once I'm done with the quilting, I'm going to take this to my cutting table and I'm going to trim away all of the extra batting and backing and square up my little project. And then I'm going to come back to the sewing machine and I'm just going to do a zigzag stitch right along all 4 edges, just to close up those edges so that they don't fray, and it gives our project a nice little clean finish. Once I'm done, we're going to go meet at the washing machine. So here we are in my laundry area. I have a load of laundry in here that I'm going to wash at the same time. It would kind of be silly to just wash these tiny little things by themselves. So I'm adding my normal laundry detergent, and if you're wondering, that's what that is. My clothes are already in there, and then here are 5 of our little mug rugs. The 6th one is the one we're not going to wash, so we can compare them. So they're just going in randomly all over. So for the settings that I have found that works best for me, I'm going to put it on the cotton and normal wash cycle, and then for the temperature, I'm changing it to cold. This is going to wash for 1 hour and 1 minute, so that's a lot of washing and agitating in there. We'll come back once the wash is done and we'll look at it before we throw it in the dryer. Okay, my wash is done. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have, and I have to dig through and find it with all of my clothes. Alright, I'm going to pause this for a second. I'm going to find all of these. Okay, so here we go, and these are all wrinkly. Okay, so we're just going to stretch them out a little bit. This actually turned out not too bad. This is the one we used the iron and retain. So that gives me hope for just using the iron. All of the colors are pretty good. This one faded quite a bit. So this one was the iron with no retain. So that just shows you what the difference the retain makes, even with toner from a laser printer. So there's that. This one faded a little bit. This one was the Cricut at 305 for 10 seconds with retain. This one, oh, that one's sad. This one was the Cricut 305 for 10 seconds with no retain. So both of these were the same temperature, same time. This one's got retain and this one doesn't. You can see that difference. And my other one just fell back in. This one is the Cricut at 340 for 40 seconds with retain. And I think that's probably the best one yet. Okay, so just so we can see what the dryer does, I'm throwing all of these in with my clothes, and I'm going to do a cotton normal setting and the normal, I think it's like a warm dry. The normal one that I wash all my clothes with and my quilts. So let's see what happens when we do this. I'm just done getting all of my little mug rugs out of the dryer. So this is what we're going to do so we can get a really good comparison. This is the mug rug printed out on paper. This is the mug rug that's printed out on fabric, and this one was iron heat set, and this did not go through the wash. So you can see what the inks do. Maybe you're doing a project that you know is never going to be washed. You can keep all your inks nice and pretty and not have to go through all the extra steps. So that is those comparisons, and we're going to start with the ones that I think didn't do so great. Here's this one, and almost all of those inks faded away, and a lot of the black faded away too. So this one was the Cricut at 305 for 10 seconds and no retain. You can definitely see the difference. That's really sad. Then we have this one, which has a little bit more inks that stayed in, but pretty much your project would be really sad. This one is the iron with no retain. So we heat set with the iron, and we did not treat the print with retain. This one, let's see, this one's getting better. This one was the Cricut at 305 for 10 seconds with retain. So let's take a look. Let's see, this was the Cricut at 305 with no retain. So that's the difference that the retain makes right there. And this is at 305, so it's not quite as hot as the next one we're going to take a look at. Let's see, here's this one, which I think that that's pretty good. This one was the iron with retain. So if you just have an iron and, whoops, I forgot to cut that little string. If you just have an iron and you set it to the highest cotton setting and you do about 35 to 40 seconds all over your print and then set with retain, those are the results that I've gotten. So just as a comparison, you can see before and after. And then this one is the Cricut at 340 for 40 seconds with retain. And I think that's probably the best one out of all of them. It hardly has no fading whatsoever. And let's do a comparison that way so you can see the difference. Now, on my other experiment, I turned the temperature up to like 385, and it really set the inks in. However, it was so hot that it changed the color of my print a little bit. So today's experiment, I've lowered the temperature some, 340, and that is pretty close to the original print on paper. So it didn't really discolor the colors of the toner, not hardly any at all. So I'm loving that result. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you'd like to get a copy of this, the link is going to be in the description box below. And if you do some testing, I'd love to hear your results, and you can comment down in the comments section. I hope you make some of these for your friends. They're so cute. They're the perfect size little mug rug to put a little coffee or a drink, maybe a little snack. These would be great gifts for people in your quilting guild. We have Christmas coming up for all of your sewing friends. How cute would that be? So we've basically made our own little fabric panel. Okay, I'm off to start another project. So we will see you all really soon. If you want to share your pictures with me, I'd love it if you join me over on the Creative Crew group. The link for that group, if you haven't already joined, is down in the description box. And I hope that you have found all of this experimenting really helpful. We'll see you all really soon. Bye.